Commander Taeyong stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the screens in front of him. His green-scaled fingers drummed against the metal armrest as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The holographic star map floated in the air, showing a system that should have been completely dead. But it was not dead. Something down there was alive, or at least powered on, and that should have been impossible. "Commander, I am running the diagnostics again," said Lieutenant Hyuna from her station across the bridge. Her voice was calm, but Taeyong could hear the confusion in it. "The energy readings are stable. Whatever is making this power has been running for, sir, the computer cannot even calculate how long. The numbers are too big." Taeyong leaned forward in his chair. His crew had been exploring the outer regions of the galaxy for 3 full cycles now. They had seen dead planets, empty systems, and ruins of ancient civilizations. But nothing like this. Nothing that still had power after so much time. "Show me the archival data again," he ordered. A young officer named Miho pressed some buttons on his console. The holographic display changed, showing old records from the Galactic archives. The text was simple and clear. This system was called Sol. The third planet from its star was called Earth. According to every record the Vrexian Empire had, a primitive species called humans had lived there once. They were listed as extinct. They had disappeared exactly 500,000 years ago. 500,000 years? Taeyong said quietly. They did not even have space travel when they vanished. The records say they were still fighting with chemical rockets and primitive computers. How can anything from that time still be working? "Maybe the records are wrong," suggested Hyuna. She stood up from her station and walked closer to the command chair. "Maybe the humans were more advanced than we thought." Taeyong shook his head. "The Galactic archives are never wrong. Every species that achieves space flight gets documented. The humans never made it that far. They were supposed to be like children playing with fire. And then one day they were just gone. Every last one of them disappeared without a trace." Another officer, a female named Jaiwon, spoke up from the navigation station. "Sir, we are approaching the outer edge of the system now. Should I slow our speed?" "Yes. Reduce to 1/4 speed. I want full scans of everything." Taeyong stood up and walked to the main viewing window. Through the transparent metal, he could see the distant yellow star growing brighter. "Raise shields to maximum. We do not know what we are dealing with." The ship hummed as its defensive shields powered up. Around the bridge, crew members worked at their stations, running scans and checking systems. Everyone was nervous. Taeyong could feel it in the air. His people, the Vrexians, were the strongest military power in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds. Their technology was the best that existed. But even so, something about this situation felt wrong. "Commander, the energy signatures are getting stronger," reported Miho. His young face looked worried. "They are coming from multiple locations. The third planet, its moon, and, sir, there are readings from the asteroid belt too. And from the outer planets." "That is impossible," said Hyuna. "The entire system would have to be filled with active technology." "I am telling you what the sensors show," Miho replied, his voice rising. "Whatever is down there, it is big. Really big." Taeyong returned to his command chair and sat down slowly. His mind was racing. 500,000 years was an incredibly long time. On his home world, that was before the Vrexians had even evolved intelligence. Entire mountain ranges could rise and fall in that much time. Oceans could dry up. Continents could move. How could any machine still be working after that long? "Take us closer to the third planet," he ordered. "But stay alert. If anything moves toward us, I want to know immediately." The ship moved forward through the darkness of space. As they got closer to Earth, the sensors began to show more details. The planet itself looked beautiful. It was covered in blue oceans and green continents. White clouds swirled across its surface. It looked alive and healthy. "Sir, this is strange," said Jaiwon from navigation. "I am detecting no cities. No structures. No roads or buildings. Just forests and oceans and mountains. It is like nobody ever lived there at all." "But the energy readings are real," added Hyuna. "They are definitely coming from this system. Look here." She pointed to her screen. "There are massive structures in orbit around the planet. And the moon is hollow. Or at least partially hollow. There is a huge facility inside it." Taeyong felt a chill run down his spine despite his scales. A hollow moon. Orbital structures. A planet reclaimed by nature. What had happened here? "I am receiving something," announced the communications officer, a male named Do-hyun. "It is not a message exactly. More like automated warnings. They are in hundreds of different languages. None of them are in our database." What do they say? Asked Taeyong. Do-hyun worked at his console, letting the computer try to translate. After a moment he looked up with wide eyes. They all say the same thing. Warning. Do not approach. Restricted space. Leave immediately. The bridge went silent. Everyone looked at their commander, waiting for orders. Taeyong thought carefully. Every instinct told him to be cautious. But his duty was to explore and report back to the Vrexian Empire. If there was functioning ancient technology here, his people needed to know about it. This could change everything. Ignore the warnings, he said firmly. Prepare a landing team. We are going down to that moon. The landing shuttle touched down on the gray surface of Earth's moon with barely a sound. Commander Taeyong was the first to step out, followed by 5 members of his team. They wore protective suits, though the moon had a breathable atmosphere inside the facility they had detected. That was the first strange thing. Moons did not have atmospheres. Stay close together, Taeyong ordered through his helmet radio. Keep your weapons ready. The entrance to the lunar base was a simple rectangular door built into the side of a crater. It was made of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light. When they approached, the door simply slid open without a sound. No locks. No security. It was as if the base was inviting them inside. Lieutenant Huna scanned the doorway with her equipment. Commander, this is strange. My scanner cannot read the material of these walls. It is like the metal is eating the scanner beams. Noted, said Taeyong. Move forward. They stepped inside and the door closed behind them. The corridor in front of them was wide and tall, with smooth walls that curved gently. Soft lights came on automatically as they walked, illuminating their path. The air was clean and fresh despite the base being abandoned for 500,000 years. How is this possible? Whispered Specialist Jiwon. She was the team's expert on ancient technology. These lights should not work. The power system should have failed thousands of years ago. Hundreds of thousands of years ago. Engineer Miho knelt down and touched the floor. The material is warm. There is active power running through the entire structure. This place is not just functional. It is fully operational. They walked deeper into the base. The corridors seemed to go on forever, stretching down and down into the moon's interior. According to their maps, they should have reached the bottom of the moon already. But the corridor kept going. This is impossible, said Huna, checking her instruments again. We have walked down for 20 minutes. We should be at the center of the moon by now. But the corridor continues. It is like the inside is bigger than the outside. Taeyong stopped walking and looked at the walls around them. They were covered in symbols and writing. The characters were beautiful and flowing, completely unlike any language in the Galactic archives. Jiwon, can you read any of this? He asked. The specialist approached the wall and activated her translator implant. The device was designed to decode any written language, even extinct ones. But as it scanned the symbols, the implant began to struggle. Strange sounds came from the device as it tried to process the information. The symbols they are dates, Jiwon said slowly, her voice full of disbelief. This section of the wall was built 240,000 years ago. And this section over here is even older. 400,000 years. Commander, if these dates are correct, this facility is older than the entire Vrexian civilization. It is older than any civilization in the known galaxy. Science Officer Do-hyun stepped forward and touched one of the symbols. As soon as his gloved finger made contact, the symbol glowed with a soft golden light. Then the next symbol glowed. And the next. Like a chain reaction, light spread across the entire wall, revealing more information. What did you do? Asked Taeyong sharply. I do not know, Do-hyun replied, pulling his hand back. I just touched it. The lights on the wall began to move, flowing like water down the corridor ahead of them. The team followed the lights deeper into the base. After another 10 minutes of walking, they emerged into an enormous chamber. The room was so large that the ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. The walls curved in a perfect circle, and in the exact center of the chamber stood a cylindrical column. It was about 3 meters tall and 1 meter wide, made of the same dark material as the walls. But this column was different. It pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to breathe, growing brighter and dimmer in a steady rhythm. What is that? Whispered Huna. Some kind of power source, suggested Miho. Or maybe a computer core. The energy readings from this room are incredible. Taeyong approached the column slowly, his weapon ready. The blue light was hypnotic, pulsing in a pattern that almost seemed alive. Around the base of the column, more symbols were carved into the floor. These symbols glowed with the same blue light. Do not touch anything, Taeyong ordered. We need to scan it first and understand what we are dealing with. But Science Officer Dohayan was not listening. He had always been curious, sometimes too curious. He believed that Vrexian technology was the best in the galaxy, that nothing could harm them. So when he saw the beautiful pulsing column, he did not think about danger. He only thought about discovery. Just one quick scan, Dohayan said, stepping forward before anyone could stop him. He reached out and pressed his palm against the surface of the column. The effect was instant and overwhelming. The blue light exploded into brilliant white, so bright that everyone had to cover their eyes. The column began to hum, a deep sound that they could feel in their bones. Then the entire chamber came alive. Screens appeared on every wall, thousands of them, all activating at the same moment. Holographic displays filled the air above their heads. Symbols and words and images flashed across every surface. The warnings came in languages they had never heard, languages that were older than memory. "What have you done?" shouted Taeyong over the noise. Dohayan stumbled backward from the column, his eyes wide with shock. "I did not mean to. I just touched it." The warnings continued to flood the chamber. Some were in simple text. Others were in complex mathematical equations. A few showed images of Earth being protected by enormous weapons. All of them said the same basic thing: leave. You are not welcome. This space is protected. But the Vrexian team did not leave. They had come too far. They had found something incredible, something that could change everything for their empire. Commander Taeyong made the decision to push forward, to explore deeper, to take what they could learn. Up above them, in orbit around Earth, Lieutenant Sujin sat at her station on the main ship. She was monitoring the away team and watching the sensor displays. Suddenly, every alarm on the bridge began to scream at once. "Commander Taeyong," she called into her radio. "We have a problem. A big problem." "What is it?" came Taeyong's voice, crackling with static. "Sir, the entire Sol system is waking up. I am detecting massive power surges from hundreds of locations. The asteroid belt. The ice moons. The gas giants' rings. Everything is activating." Sujin's hands shook as she watched her screens. Across the solar system, hidden doors were opening. Structures that had been camouflaged for millennia were revealing themselves. And from each location, something was emerging. Something huge. Something that had been sleeping for 500,000 years. "Ships," she whispered. "There are ships everywhere. Thousands of them. And they are all coming toward us." Commander Taeyong stood in the lunar chamber, surrounded by his team, as the thousands of holographic warnings finally stopped flashing. The silence that followed was almost worse than the noise. He touched the communicator on his suit and opened a channel to the ship above. "This is Commander Taeyong of the Vrexian Exploratory Fleet," he said, trying to keep his voice calm and steady. His heart was beating fast inside his chest, but he could not let his crew hear fear in his words. "We come in peace. We are explorers seeking knowledge about the species that once lived in this system. We mean no harm to whatever automated systems are still working here." For a long moment there was only silence. The blue column in the center of the room continued to pulse with light. The team stood frozen, waiting. Then something happened that made everyone jump. A voice spoke. It came from everywhere at once, from the walls and the floor and the air itself. "I am the custodian network," the voice said. It sounded artificial, like a computer, but there was something else in it too. Something that felt almost alive, almost warm, like a distant memory of a real person. "I was created by humanity to protect their home and to wait for those who would come after them. You say you come in peace, Commander Taeyong. But you ignored our warnings. You broke into our most sacred place. Why should we believe anything you say?" Taeyong swallowed hard. "We did not understand the warnings. We thought this system was dead. We thought we were exploring ruins." "Ruins?" The custodian's voice almost sounded amused. "You thought wrong." Back on the ship in orbit, historian Sujin sat at her station with her hands pressed against her recording equipment. She had been documenting everything since they entered the Sol system, but now something incredible was happening. Her screens were filling with data, more data than she had ever seen in her entire career. The holographic displays in the lunar chamber began to change. The warnings disappeared, replaced by images. Beautiful, clear images that looked more real than reality itself. The team watched in amazement as Earth appeared before them, but not the Earth they had seen from orbit. This was Earth as it had been long ago. Cities rose from the holographic display, cities made of glass and light that stretched into the sky. Buildings so tall they seemed to touch the clouds. Roads that floated in the air, carrying vehicles that moved without wheels. Orbital rings circled the planet, huge structures covered in gardens and homes where millions of people lived. Ships moved between Earth and the Moon, so many ships that they looked like a river of light flowing through space. "This is impossible," whispered Specialist Jaiwan. "The records said humans were primitive. They said humans never achieved real space travel." "The records were wrong," said the custodian's voice. "Or perhaps the records were simply incomplete. Humanity did not want to be remembered as conquerors. So when they left, they erased most evidence of what they had achieved." The holographic display changed again. Now it showed ships unlike anything the Vrexians had ever imagined. These vessels did not just fly through space. They bent space itself, folding distances that should have taken years to cross in mere moments. The team watched as a human ship traveled from Earth to a distant star system in what looked like seconds. Engineer Miho's mouth hung open. "That is faster than light travel. Real faster than light travel. Not the jump gates we use. Not the wormholes. They were moving through space itself." "Humanity mastered faster than light travel 480,000 years ago," the custodian explained. "That is 300,000 years before your people, Commander Taeyong, even learned to make fire." The words hit like a physical blow. Taeyong felt dizzy. The Vrexian Empire was proud of its technology. They believed they were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. But humans had been more advanced than they were, and humans had done it nearly 500,000 years ago. More images appeared. Weapons that could make stars collapse. Shields that existed outside of normal time and space. Factories in the asteroid belt that could take raw rock and turn it into finished starships in hours. Medical technology that could regrow entire bodies from a single cell. Computers that thought faster than biological brains ever could. "We were nothing compared to them," Huna said quietly. "We are children playing with toys." The custodian spoke again. "Humanity learned much in their time. They learned how to control matter at the atomic level. They learned how to transfer consciousness from biological bodies into digital form. They learned how to exist in dimensions beyond the three you can perceive. And eventually they learned the greatest secret of all." "What secret?" asked Taeyong. The holographic display showed Earth one final time. But now the cities were empty. The orbital rings were dark. The ships were gone. The planet was covered in forests and oceans again, pristine and beautiful, as if humans had never existed at all. "Humanity learned how to transcend physical existence entirely," the custodian said. "They learned how to become beings of pure consciousness, living in higher dimensions beyond matter and energy. They did not die, Commander. They evolved beyond death itself. They left this universe behind and moved to a place where your instruments cannot detect them and your eyes cannot see them." Dohayan shook his head in disbelief. "That sounds like magic, not science." "Any sufficiently advanced science is indistinguishable from magic," replied the custodian. "That is something humans used to say. Before they left, they made a choice. They could have taken everything with them or destroyed it all. Instead, they built us. Artificial intelligences designed to protect Earth and to wait." "Wait for what?" asked Taeyong. "To wait for others like you. Species who would eventually reach the stars. Species who would find this system and wonder what happened here. Humanity hoped that the younger species would learn from their example. They hoped you would be better than they were." The holographic displays began to show something new. Recordings of actual humans moving and talking. They looked similar to many species in the galaxy, bipedal with 2 arms and expressive faces. But there was something in their eyes, something that suggested depths of thought and feeling. One human appeared larger than the others, an elderly female with gray hair and kind eyes. She spoke directly to the camera, as if she could see through time itself to this moment. "If you are watching this, then you have found our home," she said in a language the translator struggled to decode. "We left this message for you, whoever you are, wherever you came from. We made many mistakes in our time. We fought terrible wars. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. But we survived. We learned. We grew. And when we finally left, we wanted to leave something behind. Not weapons. Not conquest. But hope. Hope that you will learn from our failures. Hope that you will build something better than we did." The message ended. The elderly human faded away. Silence filled the chamber once more. "She was the last human to leave Earth," the custodian said softly. "Her name was Chin, and she volunteered to stay behind long enough to complete our programming and to record that final message. Then she joined the others in transcendence." Taeyong felt something strange in his chest. An emotion he could not quite name. These humans had achieved everything. They had become like gods. But instead of ruling the galaxy, they had simply left. And they had left behind gifts for strangers they would never meet. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now," said the custodian, "you will be tested." The floor beneath their feet vanished. Commander Taeyong felt a moment of weightlessness, then his boots touched solid ground again. But they were no longer in the lunar chamber. The walls had changed. The ceiling had changed. Everything had changed. "Where are we?" Lieutenant Huna demanded, her hand going to her weapon. "Do not be alarmed," said the custodian's voice from everywhere and nowhere. "You are still on the moon. But I have transported you to a different section of the facility. This is a simulation chamber. What you are about to see is not real, but the choices you make here are very real indeed." Taeyong looked around slowly. They were standing in a street he recognized immediately. Tall buildings surrounded them, made of dark purple stone that gleamed in the sunlight. Flying vehicles moved overhead. People walked past them on the sidewalks, though these people seemed not to notice the team at all. "This is Vrexia Prime," whispered Miho, his voice full of wonder. "This is our capital city. This is home." The simulation was perfect. Every detail was exactly right, from the 3 moons visible in the sky to the smell of cooking food from nearby restaurants. It was so real that Taeyong had to remind himself it was not actually happening. "This is a test," the custodian explained. "Not a test of your strength or your intelligence. Those things do not matter. This is a test of your character. A test of who you truly are inside." Specialist Jaiwan turned in a circle, studying the simulated city. "What kind of test?" "Humanity left behind great gifts," the custodian said. "Technology that could change your entire civilization. Medicine that would eliminate every disease your people suffer from. Energy systems that could power all your worlds forever without pollution or waste. Manufacturing techniques that would end scarcity and hunger. Weapons that would make you invincible in war. All of this and more is stored in our databases waiting." Taeyong felt his hearts beat faster. Both of them were pounding in his chest. "You would give us all of that?" "Perhaps," replied the custodian. "That depends on what you choose to do with it. Watch now and see your future." The simulation shifted. Time seemed to speed up. Taeyong watched as a holographic version of himself appeared in the city center. The holographic Taeyong was older, wearing formal ceremonial armor. He stood before a massive crowd of Rexians, and beside him stood the High Council, the leaders of their entire empire. "People of Rexia," the holographic Taeyong announced, his voice booming across the plaza. "We have made the greatest discovery in our history. We have found the lost technology of an ancient race called humans. With their gifts, we will become the most powerful civilization the galaxy has ever known." The real Taeyong watched in fascination as the simulation showed what would happen next. He saw Vrexian scientists studying the human technology in secret. He saw factories being built to manufacture new weapons. He saw warships being constructed, ships more powerful than anything that existed in the galaxy. Within 5 years of simulation time, the Vrexian Empire had a fleet that could destroy entire planets. No other species could stand against them. The simulation showed the Empire conquering system after system. Species that had been their equals became their subjects. Species that had been their enemies were wiped out entirely. "We would be unstoppable," breathed Huna, watching the simulation with wide eyes. But then the simulation continued further. Taeyong saw the Empire growing too large to control. He saw rebellions breaking out on conquered worlds. He saw the weapons that had made them so powerful being turned against them by desperate rebels who stole the technology. He saw Vrexian fighting Vrexian as different factions struggled for control of the power. Finally, he saw Vrexia Prime itself burning. The great capital city reduced to ruins. The empire collapsed from within, torn apart by the very power it had tried to control. In the end, the Vrexian species was left weaker than it had been before they found Earth. "This is the first path," said the custodian as the simulation froze on the image of the burning city. "The path of keeping the power for yourself. Using it to dominate others. Humanity tried this path once long ago. It nearly destroyed them." The simulation reset. Once again, Taeyong saw himself standing before the High Council and the people of Vrexia. But this time, his holographic self said different words. "People of Vrexia," the holographic Taeyong announced. "We have made a great discovery and we have made a great decision. We have found the technology of humanity and we choose to share it. Not just with our own people but with every species in the galaxy. Every species, even our enemies." The real Taeyong felt Huna grab his arm. "No," she whispered urgently. "That would be madness. Our enemies would use it against us." But the simulation continued. Taeyong watched as the human technology was broadcast freely to every civilization in the known galaxy. At first there was chaos. Some species did try to use the new weapons for conquest, but the weapons were designed cleverly. The most dangerous systems required cooperation between multiple species to operate. No single civilization could weaponize the most powerful technology alone. Within 10 years of simulation time, something remarkable happened. The abundance created by the human technology made war pointless. When every species had unlimited energy and resources, there was nothing left to fight over. Ancient enemies became trading partners. Species that had never trusted each other began to work together on scientific projects that benefited everyone. The simulation showed a galaxy transformed. New discoveries were made every day as different species shared their unique perspectives. Diseases were cured. Lifespans were extended. New worlds were colonized not through conquest but through cooperation. And at the center of it all was Earth, protected by the custodian network, serving as a neutral meeting ground where all species could gather. "This is the second path," said the custodian. "The path of sharing. Of lifting others up instead of pushing them down. This is the path humanity hoped you would choose." The simulation froze again. Taeyong stood between the two possible futures, one showing destruction and the other showing hope. "Now you must decide," the custodian said. "What will you do with humanity's gift? Will you take it for yourself and your empire alone? Or will you share it with all species, even those you consider enemies? This is not an easy choice. Both paths have risks. Both paths have rewards. But only one path is truly worthy of humanity's legacy." Historian Sujin, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "What if we choose wrong? If you choose the first path, the path of selfishness and domination, then we will lock away the human technology forever," the custodian replied. "The weapons will remain hidden. The knowledge will stay buried. We will continue to protect Earth and wait for another species to find us. Perhaps the next visitors will be wiser than you." "And if we choose the second path?" asked Taeyong quietly. "Then we will give you access to the human archives. Not everything, not the most dangerous weapons, but enough to transform your civilization and many others. Enough to build a better galaxy than the one you live in now." Taeyong looked at his team. Hyuna looked conflicted, torn between her military training and something else he saw in her eyes. Miho looked thoughtful, his scientific mind already imagining possibilities. Jaiwan looked scared, understanding the weight of this decision. Sujin simply looked sad, as if she already knew what choice would be made. "How long do we have to decide?" Taeyong asked. "You must decide now," the custodian said. "Before you leave this chamber. Before you return to your ship. The fate of your species and countless others depends on what you choose in this moment." The simulated city around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Two futures hung in the balance. One path led to power and dominance and ultimately destruction. The other path led to cooperation and hope and an uncertain but potentially beautiful future. Commander Taeyong closed his eyes and thought about the elderly human woman in the recording. The one named Chin who had stayed behind to leave a message for strangers. She had achieved everything, had become like a god, and yet she had given it all away. He thought about his own people and what they might become. Then he opened his eyes and made his choice. Commander Taeyong stood perfectly still in the simulation chamber. The two possible futures hung in the air before him, one showing fire and destruction, the other showing hope and cooperation. His team waited for his decision. The custodian network waited. Perhaps, in some way, the vanished humans themselves were waiting too, watching from whatever higher dimension they now existed in. He thought about his people. The Vrexian Empire had been built on strength and conquest. For thousands of years, they had expanded across the stars, taking what they wanted, defeating anyone who stood in their way. It was who they were. It was in their blood and their history. Every instinct he had screamed at him to take the technology and use it for Vrexia alone. With human weapons and knowledge, his people could rule the entire galaxy. They would be safe forever. No enemy could ever threaten them again. It was the logical choice. The smart choice. The choice any good military commander would make. But then Taeyong turned and looked out through the chamber windows. Through the transparent walls, he could see Earth hanging in space. The blue and green planet turned slowly, peaceful and beautiful. Clouds swirled across its surface. Oceans sparkled in the sunlight. It looked like a jewel floating in the darkness. That planet had given birth to a species that became like gods. They had achieved everything that could possibly be achieved. They had conquered death itself. And yet they had not conquered the galaxy. They had not enslaved other species. They had simply left, and they had left gifts behind for strangers. "I choose to share it," Taeyong said quietly. His voice was steady, but inside his hearts were pounding. "All of it. With everyone. Every species in the galaxy. The words seemed to echo in the chamber. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Lieutenant Huna stepped forward, her face showing complete shock. "Commander, the High Council will have you executed for treason," she said urgently. "If you give this technology to our enemies, they will call you a traitor to your own people. They will kill you for this." Taeyong nodded slowly. "Perhaps they will. I've thought about that. But it does not change my decision." "Why?" Huna demanded. "Why would you throw away your life? Why would you throw away everything our empire could become?" "Because humanity did not leave this legacy for the Vrexian Empire," Taeyong replied. He gestured at Earth outside the window. "They left it for all of us. For every species that would come after them. If we hoard it, if we keep it only for ourselves, then we prove we are not worthy of their gift. We prove we learned nothing from their example." He turned to face his entire team. Huna looked angry and confused. Miho looked thoughtful. Jaiwan looked frightened. Historian Sujin had tears running down her face, though whether they were tears of sadness or joy Taeyong could not tell. "Humanity nearly destroyed themselves," Taeyong continued. "The custodian told us that. They fought terrible wars. They made awful mistakes. But they survived and they learned. They became better than they were. Maybe if we share this gift instead of keeping it, we can become better too. Maybe we can finally be something more than conquerors." The custodian's voice filled the chamber, and for the first time, it sounded warm. Almost happy. "You have chosen wisely, Commander Taeyong. Humanity would be pleased with your decision. You will have access to our archives. Not the weapons. Not the tools of destruction. But the knowledge that can lift your civilization and many others beyond the conflicts that have defined your existence." The simulation around them dissolved. The fake city of Vrexia Prime faded away like smoke. They were back in the real lunar chamber with its pulsing blue column. But now something was different. New holographic displays appeared, showing vast libraries of information. "Medical technology that can cure diseases," the custodian explained as images flowed across the screens. "Energy systems that can power entire worlds without pollution. Manufacturing methods that eliminate scarcity. Agricultural techniques that can feed billions. And most importantly, the wisdom humanity gained through their mistakes. All of this is now yours to share." Taeyong watched the information scroll past. It was more knowledge than he could comprehend in a lifetime. "What about the weapons? The warships we saw?" "Those will remain locked," the custodian replied. "Humanity learned that giving weapons to younger species only leads to more violence. But we will protect you as you share this knowledge. Any species that tries to use the new technology for conquest will find their weapons disabled by our systems. We will ensure that humanity's gift is used for building, not destroying." Over the next 6 months, everything changed. Commander Taeyong returned to Vrexia Prime and presented his discovery to the High Council. Just as Huna had predicted, many council members were furious. They called him a fool and a traitor. Some demanded his immediate execution. But Taeyong had made sure to broadcast everything to the entire galaxy before returning home. Every species with radio receivers got the message. The human archives were being opened. The knowledge was being shared with everyone. It was too late to keep it secret. At first there was chaos. Some species tried to weaponize the technology. The Draken Confederacy attempted to build weapons from the human designs. The Kelthian swarms tried to create biological weapons using human medical knowledge. But every time someone tried to use the technology for violence, the custodian network detected it and shut down their systems remotely. "You cannot use our gifts to harm others," the custodian's message played across the galaxy. "That is not why humanity left this legacy. Choose cooperation or choose nothing." Slowly, reluctantly, the galaxy began to change. Engineer Miho led a team of scientists from 12 different species to study the human energy systems. Working together, they built the first fusion reactor that could power an entire planet. The design was shared freely with everyone. Historian Sujin worked with scholars from across the galaxy to translate and teach human history. She showed them how humanity had nearly destroyed themselves with wars over resources and ideology, and how they had finally learned to work together. Specialist Jaiwan helped coordinate the medical teams. Human healing technology could regrow lost limbs, cure genetic diseases, and extend lifespans by decades. Within a year, plagues that had killed millions were eliminated completely. Lieutenant Huna remained angry at Taeyong for a long time. She believed he had betrayed their people. But 2 years after the discovery of Earth, her younger sister fell ill with a disease that had no cure in Vrexian medicine. Human medical technology saved her life. After that, Huna stopped being angry. As for Taeyong himself, the High Council did strip him of his military rank. He was no longer a commander. But they did not execute him. Public opinion across Vrexia had shifted. Most people saw the benefits of the shared technology. Their lives were better now. Food was abundant. Energy was cheap and clean. Medicine was advanced. They did not want to go back to the old ways. 5 years after the discovery, Taeyong stood in the same plaza where his holographic self had stood in the simulation. But this was real. Representatives from 70 different species gathered there for the first Galactic Cooperation Summit. Ancient enemies stood side by side, talking and sharing ideas instead of fighting. "Did we make the right choice?" asked a voice beside him. Taeyong turned to see Hyuna standing there. She wore civilian clothes now, not military armor. She worked as a teacher, educating young Vrexians about the other species in the galaxy. "I believe we did," Taeyong replied. "Look around. This would not have been possible if we had kept the technology for ourselves. We would have used it to conquer, and eventually it would have destroyed us just like the simulation showed." Far above them, invisible to their eyes, the custodian network continued its eternal watch over Earth. The blue and green planet turned peacefully in space, protected by guardians that would never tire and never stop waiting. And sometimes, late at night when the solar system was quiet, the custodians would broadcast old human music across the stars. Songs about hope and love and the belief that tomorrow could be better than today. Small reminders that this legacy came from real people who had dreamed of a better universe. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts and disagreements. But it was better than it had been. And it would continue to get better, one choice at a time, guided by the wisdom of a species that had learned through pain to build something beautiful before they left.